Hello again, everybody. The Bearded Prepper coming back to you. Thanks for tuning back in. I just wanted to come back and bring you a brief overview, if you will, of the agricultural initiatives that we're doing here, some of the things we're practicing. It's been really great to partner with this orphanage over the last year because this is my third trip to Central America in the last year. And each time I learn something a little bit newer. What works, what doesn't. I get curveballs thrown at me, things I didn't expect to happen. The weather doesn't cooperate. So we're learning how to grow in rainy seasons, as is common here, and dry seasons. And that's important for me because in America, where I live, sometimes there's rainy years, sometimes there's dry years. So I'm getting experience in both climates, which will be useful because we have such a short growing season in America. If we're trying to provide for ourselves, you get one shot, really, basically, one summer to do it, not year round like here. So, but you'll see that we're trying multiple techniques, and we've refined those techniques over the last year, not just by trial and error, but also by engaging local farmers and experts, if you will, to learn what their experiences taught them. See, in your preps, it's not just about what you've learned and what you have. It's about what other people know also and what they've learned. That way you can glean knowledge and wisdom from generations sometimes of, of farmers and people just trying to survive. So you'll see that we have a lot of different areas, like a greenhouse that's truly not a greenhouse yet. It's more shade cloth over the top because the sun is very intense here. We're hoping eventually to get that covered with plastic on the roof to keep the rain out during the rainy season. We're going to be mixing some soils to help with drainage and also composting in some manure, and we're sifting the dirt to get as much of the hard clay out as we can. So beyond that, we're also taking advantage of every open space we can find right now and trying to make plans to open new ones. So, and we're also planting vegetables together that are kind of symbiotic, like beans and corn. You'll see that. And we're building systems with the materials we can find locally in this remote area to build irrigation systems. One thing that you'll find is true about third world settings. You can find a tractor or a generator or a water pump or any kind of engine that is very old, and they'll take pieces and sometimes even pieces that aren't made for engines and make them work and put them back together. So you get a good crash course in being resourceful and building parts or keeping machinery running that you ordinarily a lot of times may just dispose of and start over. So if you don't have parts, you don't have access, you don't have money, it's important to know how to keep things going and be resourceful. So also, I'll throw in a couple of extra issues, like how I ended up with 5 stitches. It happens. It was my own stupid fault. And injuries or potential hazards, if you will, in the field that you maybe you don't think about now, but you may need to be prepared for in a situation where you're surviving or just getting by. So I used to always keep a lot of sutures and materials like that around, and I have to admit, I've let my first aid kit kind of get lackadaisical, if you will. So this trip has impressed upon me the need to actually rebuild that, make sure I have some sutures on site or some other materials to close open wounds. Thankfully, I had a physician traveling with me this time, and he had a kit, and he stitched me back up, and things of that nature too. So follow along and take a look at what we're doing agriculturally and some of the practice we're getting to help feed the orphans, and maybe it'll spur some thoughts on your end, as well as things that you need to have prepared in case you're trying to feed yourself, your family, or maybe a few others. One important thing to do when you're trying to be self-sufficient is to save your own seeds. These are the green beans that were grown here that we planted last year. They were saved, they were dried, so we can shell them and get out the seeds. But if you can come in and get a close-up view you can see some problems here. There's some good seeds and some that were picked too green or not dried properly. So only about maybe 60% of the seeds that we saved are going to be viable, because if you plant a moldy seed, you get a chance of having a diseased plant. So we're going to separate these, clean them, or put the clean ones separate. We're going to plant them after we inspect them. These we may try to plant just to see, because you want to salvage all you can in a separate place far away, so there's no potential for And once we're finished shelling, we're going to take these and feed them to the cows, so you don't waste anything. But that's what it takes to survive and to be self-sufficient, is to think ahead, make sure you're saving your seed, because right now I can't find green bean seeds anywhere in this whole valley. So fortunately, we thought ahead, we planned ahead, and we have seeds to plant. So here's another field. We've started with corn and beans. Got some avocado trees and green beans on the backside of it. Also, this is the start of a mandarin grove. The little jugs you see on sticks beside the trees are 3-liter Coke bottles, soda bottles, with a hole poked in them. It's a drip irrigation system. Makes it the most efficient. You can mix a little fertilizer in with it, compost tea or something, and the trees will be able to slowly soak up the moisture. It won't just all run out and run off. So makes it way more efficient. The boys can fill this up every day, and then the grove will get slow irrigation. And you can see we put the irrigation back on this. It's run with hose pipes, strategically placed right beside the guard, because the other side is the same thing as we discussed before. People watching and waiting to take from you. People with very little knowing you have more. You can see the corn is already up. And we have planted beans between every corn plant to balance each other out. In a few months, they should have lots of food here on the orphanage. Here's a cornfield by the permanent water source with a little pump out there that runs this engineered PVC sprinkler system on T-post. There's about maybe an acre there of plowed field with corn alternated with beans. We have 2 other fields I'll show you, because beans put nitrogen into the soil and corn takes it out, so it's a good relationship between the two to plant them together. Also, you can plant pumpkins too. That'll help shade the soil and prevent water loss. We did the best we could over there with the fence, but you can see right beyond the cornfield is the neighbors. So I'm sure we will have some sharing, if you will, unintentional sharing of the produce in this field, because in the night or some point someone's going to sneak over and take some. It always happens. So you always plan to lose a little bit, either to pest or theft. Guard it the best you can. We did strategically plant this field and the next one I'm going to show you next to the guard station, the permanent guard station there at the gate in the compound. And we do have guards roving all the time, but you know, if someone has nothing to do but sit in the shade and watch, they learn their routine, or they have a lookout to say, hey, the guard's coming. So you have to plan for these things in this type of setting or a survival setting. You know, here's a risk you don't think about often, but we're out in this field here, pretty far away from the others, but very close to the ones that are on the other side of the fence, always watching. Just me and El Flaco here. So I always run through my head, I say, what would I do if that decided to come over here? You know, I don't have guns or whatever. I've got my knife, such as that, but you know, I always keep tabs on what's around, what's nearby within reach. And if you look, you know, there's good sized rocks everywhere. So that's part of my planning. I always have in mind what I can grab quickly and use if I had to, and then get away. So just something to be thinking about. Always be aware, and especially when you're in the field bent over planting, you know, keep situational awareness. Here you can see the greenhouses, also known as vivero in Spanish. There's a big field there with the same style sprinkler system. Corn and beans planted together as partners. We've got more room over there for future growth, frames with no cover. But you can see in the greenhouse, they have some trees started, but we also have some melons growing. Some, that right there is El Flaco. El Flaco is getting the buckets ready. We're going to try to start some celery in here. Something that's not very common here. And I'll take you over and show you the other greenhouse also. This greenhouse is currently occupied by many cucumbers running up the vines there. There's a better way to have that. I'm trying to teach them to take these beds and put fencing up so you can have cucumbers running up instead of taking up so much space. This is actually the scene of where my laceration occurred right there. Trying to get through that tangled mess, and like a dumb person walking around with an open blade, I should have had it back in the sheath, especially in this kind of setting. And here we're preparing deeper raised beds for zanahoria, also known as carrots. We're mixing 60% soil with 20% sand and 20% compost manure. We pulled the onions and such back there yesterday. We're going to prepare those beds also, maybe for rabano, also known as beets, or I'm sorry, radish. They love radish here. And we've got some more growing outside. I'll show you. So you can see we have more raised beds out here behind the greenhouse. We prepared these beds the other day and have planted romalacha red beets. So these should be up within a couple of days. Things grow a lot faster in Central America, closer to the equator. But even though we stripped all the grass out of this, there's some chufa grass already popping up 2 days later. It's so difficult to keep it out. At this point, we'll just have to let it be until the beets are established and keep it cut back. You can see we still have green beans there that are finishing. We'll get one more picking off of those. They're almost done. We're saving some of the bigger ones for seed also, so we can plant in stages. See, that's important to know. These beans are almost done. The ones I showed you by the cornfield up front are almost ready to start making. So as these finish, you have more coming. And then once the ones up front finish, the ones in the field will start coming. And once those are finished, the ones in the other cornfield will start coming, and then you will have replanted here. So you've got this constant cycle of fresh vegetables in this kind of setting where there's no cold weather. This is papayas. They do very well. Those are the older trees there that are getting replaced by the younger trees. And we take advantage of every possible space around here. We built a fence to keep the cows out, but you can see we just harvested rabano, some radishes from there. We're going to prepare that and replant it with rabanos. And yeah, I mean, that bunch over there is lemongrass. I mean, it's, you know, any kind of natural plant is good for you, but that is more for teas and flavor and such as that. But we even have a separate little shaded area out here. We're trying to plant kale and collards, something that's not typical for Central America, but we've tried before and it will grow here. I'm watching out for snakes. You know, we found the snake before, and you know, we're getting pushed out. They're going to be everywhere, especially this kind of tall grass. But you can see, I'll show you, this was planted 3 days ago in the Central America sun. You can already see some little green plants popping out there. There's one there. They grow so fast here. And look here, That's dill weed. That is yep, dill weed that has volunteered there, I guess, from some past growing. And you can see here, little plant popping out right there. It's amazing to me how quickly plants pop out in this type of weather. But there you have it. Little pineapple plant, piña, in the middle of our collard patch there. So you know, you have to have a plan in place and take advantage of every possible growing place you can. We have extra boxes there. We hope to plant more stuff back here as well after we get the soil sifted and the manure and the compost and sand mixed in. And there you have a banana field we've started also. So stay tuned. I wanted to show this to you. You know, you have to always be alert because there's some things that are familiar even in Central America. Not this, that's a thorn, but if you look behind it, there's purslane, purple stalk, thick round leaves. There's some more. That stuff grows very prolific here. Very nutritious wild edible. So always be aware of your resources. You know, one question I get a lot, especially in this kind of setting with new seeds or people that don't really know a lot about planting, and I am not representing myself as an expert horticulturalist or agri-engineer or anything, but I will tell you this. These are celery seeds. They look like little flakes of pepper. What I generally tell people is, rule of thumb, the smaller the seed, the shallower you plant it. So in this case, just put a few, sprinkle a few in, just barely dust them in, and you're done. If you have a larger seed, like something like this, you know, maybe put it in a 1/4 inch of soil. You get a bigger bean, put it down 1/2 inch to 1 inch. No more than 2 inches on any seeds, so that they'll germinate and you know, sprout. So that's just a little extra tip that I tell people. If you have any tips out there, would love to hear from you. But one thing I found for sure, working in settings like this, it's best to keep things simple so they understand and they remember. Here's another thing you may not think about. So we're in a third world setting. Healthcare is scarce. I've already had stitches. This is a viper, a baby viper, which is actually more dangerous than an adult viper because they don't know how to control their poison injection yet. He knows we're here. He's not happy. The brush fire I showed you in the last video pushed the snakes out of the mountains down into the fields. So, you know, you need to be aware before you pick anything up, any board, any tool, getting any brush. Look at what's going on. You get bit by one of these guys, it greatly diminishes your chance of survival. You got to be prepared. Have a plan. You to see what we have here. We have sand that we've sifted through the screens, cow and chicken manure compost, and soil. We're going to do 60%, 20%, 20% for drainage. But the reason, and we screened this also, because you can see this soil is like hard clay. It compacts. So we need the manure for the fertilizer and to loosen the soil up with the organic matter and the sand to help it drain. And it should do muy bueno, very well. So this is how we sift the sand here. We take the shovel, the palo, shovel the river sand, throw it through the screen into the pile, but you can see it still has some stones which can interrupt, so we're gonna get a finer mesh now and sift it back through that to get only the sand. But there's your contraption. You have to think outside the box and make your own sifters and things like that in this kind of setting. Thanks everybody for following along. I hope you got something out of this. I would love to see some comments from you if you have some extra thoughts or things that you've learned, maybe some preps that I haven't thought about, and we'll learn together. Until next time, seek the wisdom of our Lord and Savior. Be prepared. I'm the Bearded Prepper, signing off from Central America.